This is Gorham's Cave, Gibraltar, right on the southern tip of Europe. It was probably one of the last places Neanderthals called home. Neanderthals like these two. A woman and this roughly 4-year-old child also found in caves at Gibraltar. These Neanderthals, these humans, would have spent their days clambering up the rock, gathering resources from the sea, sitting around the fire in the evening. Their lives were no doubt really hard, super hard compared to now. But it's still kind of beautiful to imagine them living like that. However, their way of life was about to come to an end. The Neanderthals seemingly were not alone. Around 45,000 years ago, when they were living on Gibraltar, modern humans were just 100 kilometers away at Barrondillo Cave. Today, I want to discuss the kind of surprising results of this latest paper to look into the end of Neanderthals, ask how long did we live alongside each other, and after so much time, do we have any idea what happened to the last Neanderthals? Let's get into it. Skilly-doo. I really feel like we have to talk about Neanderthal life before the arrival of modern humans, specifically in Iberia, Spain and Portugal, because honestly, it might be the most exciting place to study them full stop, and it just makes the question of their demise even more puzzling. In the foothills of the Pyrenees, down this dirt path lies Abric Pizarro. Most British pronunciation ever. Roughly 70 to 80,000 years ago, it was home to a community of Neanderthals. It's a warm Mediterranean climate now, of course, but back then it would have been much colder, much drier. It was a climatic downturn. Not a great time to be alive. The excavators found hundreds of deer and horse bones, as well as smaller prey like rabbits and turtles, even the remains of a rhino. It's just a great example of, even in harsh climatic times, Neanderthals were very resourceful, very adaptable humans, using the full range of resources in their environment. Like, it was their home, truly. And this is the crazy thing, especially in Iberia. These animals, this landscape, even themselves, they certainly imbued them with this layer of symbolism, which we all do, of course. This is Cueva de Escubierta in central Spain. Here, archaeologists found the remains of animals, but mainly the skulls of horned animals, some of which placed over fires, it seems. I've made a whole video just about this site because it's so special. Of course, it's hard to know exactly what's going on, but the simplest explanation is that this is a collection of hunting trophies. This is a site that meant something about these horned animals. They were putting them there for a reason, right? The most likely explanation, I think, by far, is that this is like a collection of hunting trophies. If I hunted a bison with nothing but a spear, I'm making a trophy. That's hard for old Steffi Milo, that's for sure. Neanderthal creativity, though, it fully extends into areas that we once thought were the domain exclusively of Homo sapiens. At Cueva de los Aviones, the cave of the crag martin, just outside Cartagena in Spain, here, trapped in sediment that's 115,000 years old, archaeologists found these. Perforated shells, possibly used as some form of jewelry, and even more incredibly, shells that still contained red ochre, red pigment. The idea is that these are a painter's palette that's been trapped in the rock for 100,000 years. 3,000 human generations. 3,300 human generations. Kind of incredible. Like at one site in Spain, there are even hand stencils, that such iconic form of prehistoric art that was seemingly made by a Neanderthal. With all the evidence we have, it was made by a Neanderthal, at least 65,000 years old, something like that. So remarkable, man, to see the hand of a Neanderthal, an extinct, archaic form of human reaching out to us. It's crazy. It's literally crazy. What would I give to go see that? It's insane. Gives you a tingle. Gives you a tingle in the best way possible. Makes you feel small in the best way possible. All of human creativity, certainly my own, is fueled by coffee. My favorite here, brewed by Cometeer. Cheers. Yum. This isn't any old coffee. This is probably something you haven't seen before. They get coffee from the best roasters like Birch, Equator, Proud Mary, brew the coffee to perfection, and then flash freeze it into little recyclable aluminium capsules to lock in the flavor. All you have to do is melt it. If you love coffee, you'll love their World Mug collection. 32 cups of coffee from 16 different countries and roasters. It's a coffee tasting kit and easily the most exciting way to find your new favorite roast. You can rate them all in the Cometeer app. It's a head-to-head coffee showdown. Not only are the coffees in this box incredible, but they really couldn't be easier to make. For hot coffee, pop the frozen puck into your mug and add 8 ounces of hot water. Watch how fast it melts. For an iced latte, I add milk and ice first, then drizzle the thawed coffee over the top. Looks like it came from a fancy coffee shop. So tasty. Same thing for iced coffee, water and ice first, capsule on top, just give it a stir and you're good to go. My favorite at the minute is an iced latte made with this Humbler coffee from Proud Mary. So lush, guys. Absolutely lush. So good. Genuinely, the quality of the coffee I'm drinking has increased so much thanks to Cometea. Basically, I was just making rubbish instant coffee, but no longer. Grab your World Mug experience before it's all gone at cometea.com/Stefan Milo. That's also the link in my description, and you'll get $20 off your first order. And you'll have absolutely delicious coffee. Thank you to Cometea. So, obviously, the more we learn about Neanderthals here, the more we learn about how capable they were, how smart they were, how much like us they were, the more their disappearance seems strange, doesn't it? Because we're here, so why aren't they here? Obviously, we can't really get a good idea about what happened to them if we don't know when they kind of disappear. There's been a really big debate in archaeology as to whether Iberia was some sort of refuge for the Neanderthals, a place where they made their last stand. I mean, last stand sounds so deliberate, but the place that they last lived. It would make sense that that is the case because all the evidence we have is that modern humans arrived in Europe from the east, and Iberia is as far west as you can get. So likely it is the last place they lived, but statistically so, like in any meaningful way, this has been a huge debate. In the past, in the 90s, early 2000s, there was a lot of young dates reported from Neanderthal sites in Iberia. 36,000 years old, sometimes even younger. There's a debate about these human remains in Portugal, the Lago Valho child, I think they're called, whose remains were argued to show signs of admixture, recent admixture, and this person lived 24,000 years ago. Very young dates compared to the other regions where we find Neanderthals. However, better dating techniques, more thorough dating techniques, have basically cast a doubt on almost all of these sites. Almost all of them that were tested for a second time with better techniques proved to be older. Still though, the youngest sites are in Spain and Portugal. Cueva Anton is, as far as I'm aware, the youngest reported Neanderthal site with some degree of certainty. Here, the layers containing Mousterian tools, the type of tools made by Neanderthals, cannot be older than 37,100 years ago. There's another site in Portugal, the Gruta del Caldeirão. Oh, I'm just butchering your language, Portugal, so sorry. The age of the Mousterian layer here dates to 39,000 years old, roughly. These are basically the youngest reliably dated Neanderthal sites we have, with some degree of confidence. Everywhere else in Europe, they seem to have disappeared by 40,000 years ago. They're gone. So potentially in Iberia, they did live on for maybe 3,000 years more than anywhere else in Europe. And when we're dealing with these big numbers, right? 40,000 years, 37,000 years. There's not a big difference between 37 and 40. But when you think about it from the perspective of a human's life, 3,000 years, that's huge. Do you consider yourself far removed from the Bronze Age? Like, you kind of do, right? Even 3,000 years, it was a long time that they persisted in Iberia. But the question is now then, how long were we living alongside them? Modern humans seemingly arrived permanently in Europe like 47,000 years ago. This is based on evidence from Bacho Kiro Cave in Bulgaria. So 47, 46-ish thousand years ago. And yet they were all the way in Bachondio Cave by 45 to 43,000 years ago. And Neanderthals disappear 40,000 years ago-ish. That's like 7,000 years. Maybe we're living alongside each other. In Spain, if there's still Neanderthals 37,000 years ago. Again, maybe modern humans are living alongside them 8,000 years, 5, 6, 7, 8,000 years, something like that. Something like that seems to be the length of time that at least we're existing roughly in the same place together. But there's one site that could potentially change our perspective on that completely. Grotte Mandrin is not in Iberia, it's in southern France. Here, stone tools called Neronian tools, which are remarkably similar to ones made by Homo sapiens further east at places like Bacho Kiro, were found sandwiched in between layers containing Neanderthal tools. So the question is, there's always this question, is this Neanderthals having a different material culture, or is this, modern humans in the area? Well, fantastically, amazingly, rarely, at Grotte Mandrin there are also human remains. Teeth from 7 individuals were found across the layers of the cave, and one of them, a lone modern human child's tooth, was fortunately recovered from the layer containing Neronian tools, really helping to identify that particular time period as being occupied by modern humans. What's fascinating is that this layer dates between 56,800 and 51,700 years ago, thousands of years before we thought modern humans had arrived in Europe, which suggests, possibly 2 things. Either modern humans arrived in Europe thousands of years before we thought, or that, there are temporary arrivals of modern humans that actually reach quite far into the continent. Maybe both are true. Both are true to some extent. The unfortunate thing with Grot Mandrin is that Neanderthals and modern humans never seem to be at the site at the same time, which is unfortunate. I don't know that we have any evidence of that from any site in the world. But it seems that Neanderthals were there, then modern humans were there. For some reason they left, Neanderthals came back. Why that is, why? We don't know. We don't know. We know at some point, though, that humans and Neanderthals must have been in the same room at the same time, though, because we know it from our DNA, right? We admix with them. Hard to do that if you're not in the same spot at the same time. So this right here is the latest paper to try and tackle this question of Neanderthal extinction, Neanderthal disappearance. It was the inspiration for the whole video, actually, reading it. Basically, what this study did is that it used a similar technique to biologists and how biologists track species. But instead of a species sighting being the touch point for the study, the archaeological sites where we find Neanderthals and modern humans were the touch points for this study. And then you can combine it with all sorts of information, like climate reconstructions, different models, to see the niche that these species lived in. And then you can ask lots of interesting questions once you have that. Do they overlap? Are they going for similar resources? How does their distribution perhaps change over time? Lots of interesting questions like that. Once you sort of have the niche that this species, us, is living in. One of the big questions this paper wanted to answer is was climate responsible for the demise of Neanderthals? 40,000 years ago was a rough time climatically. There was a huge eruption of volcanoes around Naples, the Phlegrean fields. Climate was cold, harsh. However, at least according to the climate models created in this study, climate alone is just not enough to explain the extinction of Neanderthals. There were still suitable areas for habitation for them in Iberia, even whilst all this stuff is going on. And as long as they had that, they could probably bounce back. We see that in the archaeological record and especially in the genetic record. So this kind of thing, like we said at the start, Neanderthals are adaptable, capable. If there's an area that's still suitable for them to survive in, they're going to survive. Climate alone, probably not a great reason for Neanderthal extinction. What about us? Did we contribute in any way? We have no evidence of violence between Homo sapiens and Neanderthals. There's only one site, Shanidar Cave, where that idea is even suggested, because one Neanderthal has a pretty vicious stab to a rib bone. But we don't know that that was caused by modern humans. It's just an idea. It's just an idea put out there. It's questionable how much we were bumping into each other, really. At least according to the ecological models made by this study, our ranges overlapped, our preferred areas of habitation overlapped by just about 5%. We're just meeting each other at the fringes of the areas where we're living, it seems. This is based roughly on, how much a hunter-gatherer would move typically away from sort of a home region, from these archaeological touch points that we have of them. That, of course, raises a huge caveat in that we don't have every archaeological site that the humans and Neanderthals lived at, right? We haven't found every one. With the big caveat that we don't have every site. But if that genuinely reflects the reality of life 40,000 years ago, how often are Homo sapiens and Neanderthals even bumping into each other? And if our ranges don't overlap that much, how much are we competing for even the same resources? You would think like, oh, we're smarter, we're better, we're hunting the same animals, we're pushing them out. But if our ranges aren't overlapping that much, are we? Are we actually? The paper did have another really interesting detail, though. One thing that kind of stood out in the paper was that the regions favored by Homo sapiens, seemingly they're better connected, they're closer together, at least along these coastal routes, which is probably one of the main areas Homo sapiens expanded into Europe, was along these coastal routes. Again, our knowledge is biased by the fact that the sea level has risen so much since this time, so we're missing many, many sites that are now fully under the Mediterranean. Neanderthal society was maybe smaller and more fragmented, it seems. Genetically, one of the Neanderthals at Grot Mandrin kind of gives us that impression again. This is Thorin. Cool name, very cool name. Thorin, living at Grot Mandrin and the community that he lived in, seemingly was isolated from other Neanderthal populations for maybe 50,000 years. 50,000 years, that's a really long time. Like, I know we're debating how long 3,000 years is, but 50,000 years, that's a really long time. And yet, southern France does seem to be this core region of Neanderthal life, a very important region of Neanderthal life. And they're still cut off from their neighbors. There are so many questions that this study raised, you know. Is Thorin dated correctly? Is, you know, what do we mean by a community being isolated? All these things are being heavily debated now, thanks to that study. But assuming, you know, everything is correct, our understanding is correct, that is very interesting. At least judging from the areas where they're occupied, they're kind of more far apart, more cut off, more isolated. Modern humans, like the modern humans of Bajondillo though, are part of a much wider community, much more interconnected. In hard times, those connections and the knowledge that comes with that and the resources that come with that and the help that can come with that, it could be a huge difference, man. It could be an absolutely key difference. Yeah, it could just be that the last Neanderthals were not sort of out-competed, out-hunted, anything like that. Maybe they were just out-connected. It's almost like the Neanderthal extinction. It raises the most interesting questions about us. All of human history up to that point in the Paleolithic had been small groups of hunter-gatherers, right? The more interesting question maybe isn't like what happened to the Neanderthals, but why didn't it happen to us? What was different about us? Yeah. Question for another day though. Question for another day. Interesting, the demise of the last Neanderthals.